And do you feel like the SRO community and the shelter sort of community, are they one or are they two?
There is some fluidity. Like we have people who come to our drop-in center who live in SROs. So they go to the SROs, but a lot of folks in the SROs, they'll go eat at the shelters and they hang out at the drop-in centers. A lot of our seniors, on Fridays is our seniors day, and most of our seniors are folks who are in the SROs. And they just want a community place because we play bingo and seniors love that. And so they come and play bingo. And these are folks who are housed, they're not necessarily homeless, but this is their sense of community. So there is some interaction, I think, between folks. Because people come down from the SROs and they hang out on the street or they hang out with the folks. So there is a fluidity between the two. Questions?
You mentioned the 9th Street School that most of the kids get bused to. And I'm wondering, are there enough permanent kids that are permanent residents where there's kind of a need for a school that's closer by or maybe in that area more?
In Skid Row?
Yeah.
The Union Rescue Mission houses the largest number of families here. That's a tough question. I'm not sure. They have a lot. We only have 4 or 5 families, so ours is negligible. But I think you could have a school, but Night Street Elementary School they're renovating right now, so I think it's still closed. I believe it's still closed. They're trying to renovate it. I don't know. I just think that this community in Skid Row, this is just my personal belief, it'd be better for individuals. It's just individuals, it's a place for individuals. To play the devil's advocate on that, we have a huge sex offender population in Los Angeles. And LA, downtown LA, sometimes the only place where they can go, where they can legally be allowed to be, because it's the one place that isn't close to a school, that isn't. So we have all these guys, well, mainly guys, some women, who are sex offenders. Where do you put these people? Out in the desert? You could keep them here, but this is also not a place for families. So I don't know. I think there is a need for education services. I know Central City does that, and School on Wheels helps out with that. But I don't know. I think me personally, I'd rather see the families kind of move into a more family area, more of a family-based area versus Skid Row. I think Skid Row, if it develops and comes out, especially with the lofts and how they're developing, a lot of these folks who are now living in lofts, they're having kids now, and they're starting to think about, well, where do we send our kids to school? So there's been more talk about creating a downtown school, which would be nice, because I would hate to create another 9th Street school. It'd be nice to have a nice school where kids who go to 9th Street and kids who live in the lofts are going to the same school. I think a school like that would be really cool and really unique. But to create, I hate to say a ghetto school, would be, I don't know, I'm not sure if that would be the best. There's the city and the county have both kind of been staunch at no more families in Skid Row. That's their policy. They won't even fund programs anymore that's in Skid Row. All the grant applications for family shelters, there's a little clause on the bottom that says, not allowed in 3rd Street to 7th Street, Los Angeles, Alameda, this grant does not apply for any programs there. So I think the city and county have really been pushing on that.
Thank you. I guess one last question before we wrap up. Have you had a chance to think a little bit more about the possibilities or the potentialities of a church that would be partnering with St. Vincent, or whether you personally have any ideas about the best way that we could support you?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think one thing, as we was mentioning earlier, with there's been a change in Skid Row over the past couple of years. I think as funding has gotten tighter, more partnerships are building. Because I think people are realizing, Skid Row used to be I do my thing, Union does its own thing, Midnight does its own thing. We sometimes meet to talk about it. But over the past couple of years, as funding has gotten tighter, more people are realizing, we need to work together, and more people are realizing housing is the way. So I think with the Pathway Home, with Common Ground, what they're doing, I think that would be a good segue of getting the church in, maybe becoming part of that group, because we meet once a month. because then it's not necessarily just a St. Vincent's thing. It's you're being connected to the Skid Row provider network. And you're kind of supporting Skid Row sometimes versus St. Vincent's. Because St. Vincent's, we're hard because we don't do food. Food is not our big thing. So we don't, I know your church helped, which thank you very much. That one Sunday it was the one weekend where we were missing a group to feed our house. So that definitely helped. But food isn't one of our big things. And kind of some of the things we're trying to work on is getting folks into permanent housing and how can this community support people. Because, there's going to be ways, that's part of my job in the support services committee is, once people are in housing, how do we keep them in housing? How do we give people that stability? So I think connecting the church with Pathway Home, it would be a good start. Just off the top of my head, I think that would be a good thing to do. We talked about maybe doing something for the Easter. I remember that kind of moved over into that serving dinner that one night. Ultimately, I think one thing I've always wanted to do that our Phoenix St. Vincent de Paul does is like a mentorship program where they have all our clients who are in our transitional programs have like a case manager. But one thing that's interesting that they do in Phoenix is that they have like a mentor program. So they have a case manager, but then they have a mentor that comes and hangs out with them once a week. They take them out to dinner, they take them out to coffee, and they just hang out with the client. It's not a case management session. It's more of just a, hey, how are you doing type thing. How's your week going? We're not going to talk about your housing. We're not going to talk about budgeting. We're just going to talk just like two friends going out and hanging out. So I think that's something I'd want to eventually grow into our men's program. We're not at that place yet because we're trying to reformat it and restructure it and possibly do half of our men's program, half social enterprise. But that may be a way of incorporating folks from the church, especially if you have folks who are from this downtown community. I think it'd be interesting to do this thing where, let's meet at the Starbucks here at 2nd in Los Angeles whenever you want, or maybe every other week or so. We can just meet and have coffee and just see how you're doing. So, those are kind of two ideas, I would say, the Pathway Home and then possibly doing a mentorship thing with our clients.
And what would the role of churches be in the Pathway Home thing? Would it be?
I know initially they're going to need a lot of help because the way the Pathway Home works is creating the registry and doing a survey week. And that'll be September 11th. And they're going to need a lot of volunteers because they're going to go into the shelters. There's 4 shelters: our shelter, Union, Midnight, VOA, Volunteers of America. They're drop-in shelters, and they're going to need to interview people to see where folks are, to get people's pictures, to put them on this registry and say, okay, this is the person, we're working with him to get them into housing. And there's a whole training that we're going to be doing that we'll provide. So we mainly need workers to help out with that, to do the registry week. And I think we're still trying to figure out how churches can help. There's different ways that churches have offered to do things, in different communities. I forgot exactly what the churches were doing in Hollywood, but I know they were a big factor when Common Ground was doing the registry week there and towards their campaign. The churches were heavy, definitely on the meeting with people, but I think they did some aftercare as well. I'm not sure exactly what it was. So initially, I think it would be, one, coming to the Pathway Home is just to understand what's going on in the community, to see the different providers, to see who, kind of the players in the community, I guess you can say, who are the different aspects on what they do, and then also just doing the registry week. And I think that's a good model because Common Ground's model, which is good, is streets to homes. You get people from the streets, housing first, it's permanent supportive housing, it's getting people into not putting them through our shelter system, but get them, we'll do whatever it takes to get them into housing and then do whatever it takes to keep them in housing. So I think they have a good philosophy of how they do things, and it's more of a change, it's more of a systemic change kind of view of working with people.
Cool. Thank you.
No problem.
I think I'm going to turn this off.